Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing amazing. So, we're back with another weekly astrology video. My name is Shani. I am a Western Sidereal Astrologer. And in this video, we're going to look upon all the transits that are happening for the next week. So, I'm going to do March 10th until March 16th. And so, we're going to look at all the astrology going on, go over the transits, and kind of make you understand maybe how you can potentially utilize those transits and understand what these energies might look like. So if you're interested in this, please keep watching. I'm excited to get into it, to nerd out to some of the weekly transits. And so, yeah, just a couple disclaimers before I do start the video. Number one, I am a sidereal astrologer. So I do not use the tropical algorithm, which is used by 90% of astrologers and people who follow astrology in the Western world. So, for example, in the tropical algorithm, we are in Pisces season. However, in sidereal, we're still in Aquarius season. That's because sidereal follows the actual position of the stars and bases its zodiac wheel on the movement of the stars over time, whereas tropical is a fixed algorithm that does not follow the gradual movement of the stars. So I have found, as an astrologer for the past couple of years, much more accuracy with the sidereal system. So this is the one that I use. So if you're finding that some of the things that I'm explaining are different than what you're seeing online and whatsoever, this is why. If you want more information on sidereal astrology, please reach out to me either through my Instagram or my email. They will be listed down below in the description box. So that's number one disclaimer. Number two disclaimer, astrology is a system meant to guide us and to help us have a better perspective on our lives. It is not there to control our lives. What I mean by this is that if I'm talking about a transit that is difficult, or, if I'm talking about, let's say on a day, it's more probable that we may get into more verbal arguments. This does not mean that you should avoid talking to people or avoid being social on all in all. Astrology is not there to make us control our lives or to make us avoid anything. It's more so there to help us understand why certain things might have happened and to allow us to have a different perspective on the thing that happened during a certain day. So our lives are meant to be lived in the present, in full presence. And astrology just helps us to understand that present moment a little bit more and helps us to maybe ask ourselves deeper questions about the present moment as to why this might have happened, what I've taken out of this experience. And astrology also helps us to have more peace about the present moment, knowing that certain energies, even if they were difficult, were meant to happen at this specific time, because it's written in the stars. So yeah, this is a disclaimer I like to kind of throw in the beginning of all my weekly transit videos, because this is a mistake I used to do when I started studying astrology way back. I used to see certain transits coming up and want to like just avoid doing certain things. This is not what astrology wants us to do. Going through conflicts and difficult energies is very good. Everything is neutral, but astrology helps us to understand the energies that were at play. And so this is disclaimer number two. I think last disclaimer is that I use the Eastern Standard Time when I do list the times and dates. So if you're in a different time zone, please adjust to that. Um, all the transit times are listed down below in the description box. So if you want to find all the transits that I talk about in this video, look in the description box to see what time they're happening, what date specifically, so that you can maybe understand and align potentially with those times during the week. So yeah, do look in that description box for that. As always, I have my chart that I'm going to use and I'm going to look upon for this video. And yeah, I think that's it. So let's get into this week. So to be honest, not a huge week in the astrology. We have a lot of important ingresses going on, meaning planets changing constellations or signs, should I say. And so these are mostly what I'm going to be talking about. A lot of days have very minor transits, so only the moon making aspects, not very big days. Last week was a pretty big week. I wasn't able to film a video last week, but last week we got a few interesting aspects going on. But mostly a few ingresses that happened last week as well, notably Venus moving into Aquarius. So Venus is the planet of how we relate to other people, how we approach our relationships, what we value and what we find pleasure in, because Venus is also our values and our pleasure. And so, whichever sign that it is in kind of paints this picture as to how Venus will manifest itself for the period of about a month. So, it's been in Capricorn last month, bringing a more serious tone, structured energy to our relationships and our financial matters. Venus also rules finances. And so now that it is in Aquarius, we're looking at, interacting with people on a more Aquarian basis. Aquarius is a sign of it's a very intellectual sign. First of all, it's an air sign. It's the sign that rules groups, friendships, communities. And it's also the sign that rules things that are rebellious, unconventional, unusual, a little bit different. So this might be a time where we're more intellectually motivated when it comes to connecting with people. There is a certain level of detachment, especially emotionally speaking, when we're connecting with people. Connections are lighter. They're more, intellectually focused, maybe more group oriented as well, connecting with bigger groups, larger groups of people, and maybe potentially, connecting in a way that's a bit different, that's a bit unusual. It's very welcomed with Venus and Aquarius to do things that are a little bit different within our relationships, maybe engaging in an activity that's a bit unusual that maybe we wouldn't go for, maybe interacting with people that are outside of our circle, people that are a little bit more eccentric, being rebellious a little bit and attracting those kinds of people and relating to those kinds of people. And when Venus is in a Uranus ruled sign, which Uranus rules surprises, unexpected shifts and changes, this might also be in the cards for our relationships, like unexpected changes, shifts, things that are a little bit surprising within our close relationships. But all in all, it's a very light, I would say very friendly, very intellectual kind of energy for Venus to be in. So I genuinely think it's a pretty good place for Venus to travel in for the next month. But of course, this is only a collective delineation for everyone individually speaking. This is going to be very different because depending on your rising sign, Venus is going to be hitting a different area of life. So, for example, if you are a Scorpio rising, this is hitting your fourth house of home and family. So, this may be a time where you are more interested in connecting with your family members. Maybe you're getting more of an ease to connect harmoniously with people in your family. Maybe this is a time where you're taking more pleasure in, kind of reshaping your home or spending more time at home and, maybe buying new furniture for your home or whatsoever. So this is just one example of how knowing your rising sign is very important because it will allow you to understand how this is affecting you more personally. But all in all, Venus is a beneficial planet. It brings blessings, it brings ease wherever it sits. So whichever area of life that this is sitting in, you can expect, a little bit of more pleasure, more ease, especially with the fact that, Saturn has been in Aquarius for over a year now, bringing more tension, bringing more challenges and seriousness. There's been a lot of seriousness in our Aquarius area of life. And so Venus may be bringing a bit more fun, pleasure, ease for the period of the month. Another thing that I want to bring up before I do start the on March 10th is that on March 9th we do have the new moon in Aquarius. I currently have the chart listed for March 10th right now. We can see the moon is just separating from the sun. So this happened on March 9th. Obviously, new moons are signify new beginnings, a new and fresh energy, a new cycle that is starting in a certain area of life for everyone. So there is this energy of new beginnings, a fresh new energy coming our way. Again, this will depend on your rising sign and how this will affect you personally. If you're a Leo rising, this is hitting your seventh house of partnerships and marriage and one-to-one relationships. So we can expect major new beginnings when it comes to how you relate with people. Maybe your relationships are taking a brand new energy. Maybe it's connecting with someone in a brand new way. So this is very relationship oriented. If you're a Capricorn rising, this is all about your finances and your financial matters because these placements or this new moon is happening in your second house of finances. So it's really important. Again, I can't stress this enough to know your rising sign and to actually delineate where this is hitting to understand, which area of life is being affected. So you can maybe optimize this energy a little bit more and focus upon that, and focus on, what new beginnings are happening for me in this area. There's like a little spot in my screen and it's really bothering me because it's like on my face. Um, so anyways, if you want to know, how to find your rising sign, how to, figure that out in the sidereal system so that you can follow my my weekly reports, do reach out to me, Instagram or email in the comments, in the description box below. So, moving on now to the weekly transit talk. So I'm just gonna go. I have my little folder of notes here on my screen that basically tells me when or which transits are happening. That you can find in the description box. So March 10th, first thing that pretty much happens, again, we're moving out of this new moon energy, and we're still in the energy of, like, new beginnings, fresh new energy coming into our Aquarius area of life. On the collective, this could also mean new beginnings when it comes to Aquarius matters. Aquarius rules technology, it rules innovation, everything that is future oriented, but it also rules, again, large groups of people, large societies, things like humanitarian issues, large communities, and whatsoever. So this may be a time where there can be relatively new beginnings in anything that is humanitarian, a social cause, social justice, anything technology related as well. We could see potentially some sort of new, beginning, new thing coming out, new energy in regards to that. So you can potentially expect that within the collective. But personally, again, that will depend on your rising sign. So the first thing that we do have is, in the morning in Eastern Standard Time, eventually the moon does enter Pisces. So the moon rules our emotional world, our internal world, how we deal with our emotion for the 2 days that the moon spends in a sign. It's a very quick moving planet, and it only spends about 2 days, 2.5 days in a sign. So with the moon now being in Pisces, we move from the moon being in Aquarius, where it's lighter, it's more objective, it's more detached emotionally, to Pisces, which is like the complete opposite. Pisces being the most, one of the most emotional, most sensitive, deeply intuitive, very, very in tune emotionally sign. So we can expect that within our emotional realm for the next 2 weeks, 2 days, sorry. I know for me, like when the moon is in Pisces, I feel it. Maybe it's because I'm a water moon myself as well, but man, do I feel the strong currents of emotions, and it's like just it's such an easy access to emotion, and it's like everything kind of reaches me a bit deeper, more it's like sensitivity to things emotionally is very, very thin, it's very available. So that's usually what we can expect with moon in Pisces. It's a very emotional, very sensitive time. Moon is also how we nurture ourselves emotionally, and when the moon is in Pisces, we can find things, anything that is Neptunian, so anything that is very artistic, anything that allows us to escape the mundane, movies, music, spirituality. And these can be things that really nurture us emotionally, or just tending to our emotions, and just paying attention to what we feel, the things that we feel very deeply, emotionally, can be very healthy to do. And you may not even have the choice to do that, honestly, during the next 2 days, especially with the moon coming very close to Neptune. This is going to emphasize this deep depth of sensitivity. And speaking of the moon with Neptune, this actually ends up happening at 2:45 p.m. So a couple hours later, um, about 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the moon will conjunct Neptune. So again, our emotional world is not only very sensitive with it being in Pisces, but that sensitivity gets a big boost because the moon is essentially touches Neptune, which is a planet of it rules Pisces, right? So everything that I just talked about in terms of the themes of Pisces is also associated with Neptune. So Neptune being the planet of deep sensitivity, spirituality, of, the loss of boundaries. It's a very, very sensitive planet and very intuitive and in tune. So our emotional world are definitely meeting some depth in sensitivity. This may be a time if you're naturally a very much more intuitive person where this is very emphasized. So if you're, feeling a bit more, I would say energetically, around 10th of March in the afternoon, it's very normal. There's definitely some things that are brewing us, or some things that I would say are moving us emotionally on that day. I think it's a very emotionally moving day, generally speaking. So great day to do something that's more spiritually inclined. This is very Piscean day to listen to our emotions, to go inwards, and to escape into our own little world, again, through music, art, or anything else. Again, this might be something that we're naturally very inclined to do on that day, or just kind of naturally aligns with the energies of Moon in Pisces with Neptune. So that's kind of what's on the cards for the afternoon. Later that night, so around 10 p.m., again, not much happening on that day other than the moon forming these conjunctions. We see here later on that night, the moon is coming close to Mercury. This ends up coming into exact at 10:15 p.m. So essentially, the moon again, our emotions, our emotional world, and joining forces with Mercury, which is a planet of communication, um, uh, anything that is mental, anything that is learning, mentally inclined, our thought process, our communication, learning, speaking, and all of that, and transportation as well. There's kind of like a link between our emotional world and our communicative or intellectual world. So this is like a blending of mind and emotions. In a way, how I could perceive that would be that there could potentially be some more emotional conversations during the evening. It's very conducive to speak your emotions, to maybe journal your emotions would be a great time to do that. But if you have something a bit more, something that's weighing on your heart, or something that you feel you need to express your emotions to someone, or you need to express them in any kind of way, you'll definitely have the inclination to do that during the evening, or the it's very conducive to doing that. So, if you're having an emotional conversation, if you're having a particularly moving report with someone, it's quite normal. It's definitely in line with the energy, I would say. Um, another thing is that within the last week, Mercury did move into Pisces. Now, Mercury seems to be moving pretty quick right now in Pisces. It's going to stay there probably for about 3 weeks to a month. And Mercury being in Pisces now, our communication, our way of transmuting information, our way of thinking of information is very Piscean. So it's very emotional. It's much more, it's a less, has less structure, I would say. Pisces is really about the dissolvation, or I don't even know if that's a word, dissolving. The French in me is coming out, dissolving of structures. And it's all about, depth of sensitivity, depth of emotions. Again, very artistically inclined sign, but the more, I would say, negative aspect of Pisces is fogginess, confusion, and deception, because there's basically no structure, because there's basically no boundaries. There can be a loss of orientation, or can be easier to get a bit foggy with too much Piscean energy. And so with Mercury in Pisces, it can be a great time to be very romantic with the way that we're speaking, or very poetic, or very artistically inclined, writing a song, writing a poem, music, anything like that, is very beautiful. But when it comes to very like structured, precise information and speaking, it may be more difficult. And so that's why when Mercury's in Pisces, sometimes we got to be careful, because information can be a bit foggy. We can easily have like little miscommunications where we think we heard something, but we didn't really perceive it correctly. So again, if you're having hiccups in communication, this might be why. In, messaging, emailing, if you're having a hard time with technology, even because Mercury does tend to rule anything that's technology or cell phones and messaging. It's funny because as Mercury entered Pisces, not even a week ago, I think Instagram and Facebook had like a shutdown a couple of days ago. I don't know, I don't remember which day exactly, but it kind of went on for like the whole morning, or like a big chunk of the day, where both of the social media platforms were like completely, Meta basically was shut down. And Mercury had just entered Pisces, so I find it tends to happen when Mercury's in Pisces. It's in detriment, it's not very happy. Anything messaging, communication, media, anything that's like technology can be a bit more difficult to navigate. So do expect that as well. But yeah, communication may be a bit more foggy, less precise. Miscommunications are maybe imminent. But we may also have a more of a depth in our communication, more of like being able to speak our feelings in a way that's yeah, more accessible, I would say. Speaking about things that are more abstract, being able to understand things that are more abstract. And so very creative energy, very imaginative, even energy, I would say. So that's kind of like the few like little tidbits of Mercury and Pisces. I thought I would maybe talk about that briefly because I didn't film my video last week and Mercury just ingressed into Pisces. So yeah, all this to say, around 10 p.m. on March 10th, conducive to more emotional conversations. If it does come up, it's normal. I would say lean into it. Do welcome that kind of communication style, as it may be in the cards for that evening. So moving on to March 11th, literally really nothing, barely nothing happens. The only thing that happens, and that I believe is only later in the day, so around 9, 10 p.m., is the moon again, just making some minor aspects to the North Node and Chiron. North Node being where we're learning very karmic lessons right now, where we're kind of like where we're learning very faded energies or lessons. And so there might be something that comes up emotionally that is kind of part of destiny or is more faded or is part of our karmic lessons at this time. And that happens around, I say here I have 9:15 p.m. Let's see. Yeah, so the moon first touches North Node, and then eventually later in the evening, the moon does end up conjunct or making a conjunction with Chiron, which is the asteroid that traditionally rules um, our deeper wounds, the concept of healing. And so there might be some sort of emotional, I would say, experience that either brings up something more vulnerable, something a wound that is more vulnerable, and there might be some sort of emotional healing that comes out of that. And but that again, it's very subtle. It might just be like very subtle and very internal. Again, because the moon is a very internal planet. It's about our internal emotions, how we deal with things internally. So there might be something that triggers some sort of emotional wound or emotional healing through that experience. Again, some people might go through it more than others, but it could be very subtle as well. So that's why on the 11th, there's really not much going on. So moving on the 12th, or to the 12th of March. Again, not too much going on that day. A few lunar aspects going on. One of the main ones being that eventually the moon ends up moving into the sign of Aries for the next 2 days. So we can see right here, in the morning in Eastern Standard Time, the moon moves into Aries for the next 2 days. So again, moon being our emotional current, emotional selves, and what we find the most nurturing, emotionally speaking. And so we're moving away from the depth, the waters of Pisces, and we're going more towards Aries, which is more like I would say impulsive, active, and very quick emotional energy, very action oriented. When the moon is in Aries, it's very much about like acting on our emotions, I would say. It's a very active energy. It may be a time where emotionally we find more comfort in taking action, in pursuing our goals, and being more like masculine oriented. There might be more like I would say like feistiness emotionally. Aries is very passionate sign. It rules Mars, which is the planet of passion and action taking and taking initiative and anger as well. So sometimes our emotions are expressed a bit impulsively, and sometimes we see a little bit more of that like spiciness, I would say, emotionally speaking. But again, this is a very light internal energy, right? So it's not something that affects us tremendously. The only thing that I pretty much had written for the rest of March 12th is eventually during the nighttime, the moon forms an aspect with both Venus and Pluto. So this happens around let's see here. I wrote 9 p.m., but it's actually 10 p.m. So that will be adjusted in the description box. But yeah, around 10 p.m. at night, the moon forms a positive aspect with Venus and a harsh aspect with Pluto. And it's kind of interesting because it happens almost at the same time. And so moon, forms a more a lighter aspect with Venus, a sextile angle, which is a 120 degrees, or no, sorry, that's a trine. 60-degree angle is a sextile. And so that just means that there's an opportunity for ease, more pleasure, maybe emotionally, maybe more positive experiences with other people within our relationships. There is more of, access to pleasurable energy, and especially in regards to relationships. But at the same time, the moon forms a square with Pluto, and a square is a 90-degree angle. That's a friction and tension, and there's something that's more conflictual in the air. And Pluto is a planet of death and rebirth and transformation. So this pretty much of how I'm interpreting that is throughout the evening, there might be maybe a more heavier emotional current that kind of pops up, where maybe we have a more difficult emotional experience and we're having to see things emotionally that are a bit more hidden, usually hidden in the shadows, and there might be some sort of emotional transformation triggered from this process. So it might be a heavier, more denser, shadowy time around, the nighttime of the 12th. But this might actually allow us to maybe connect with other people in a certain way. This might actually help our relationships. Our relationships might have a positive role in that experience, but all in all, like very light, subtle energy because it's the moon. It's nothing it doesn't affect us externally too much. But if there is a heavier emotional energy around the nighttime on March 12th, definitely lean into this. There could be something that wants to be seen, something that wants to be surfaced in order to be potentially transformed and in order to maybe receive some sort of emotional death and rebirth, or transformational process through that experience. But do expect potentially a little bit of heaviness on that evening. March 13th, basically really not much as well. But basically one of the only reasons why I wanted to do this weekly astrology update is mainly to talk about the ingresses, so the major planets that moves signs, because we do have a couple. We have Pisces season starting in sidereal. We had the new moon that happened on the 9th. So understanding that new moon, and then yeah, a couple more like ingresses. We have Mars and Aquarius as well. But yeah, the main big things this week are ingresses of certain planets. So when we're talking aspects specific, oh my God, specifically, it's more calm. It's definitely not as active as the last couple of weeks, anyways, I find. But March 13th, basically one of the only things that happens on that day is, well, it's the last day of Aquarius season, first of all. So this is the last day that the sun is in the sign of Aquarius. But later in the day, the moon, again in Aries, and that happens at around, in my notes, I have 6 to 12 p.m. And so, yeah, so the moon will essentially join Jupiter right here, meaning that Jupiter kind of is implemented or involved in our emotional process and our emotional energies. And Jupiter is a planet of abundance, luck, anything that is more optimistic. Jupiter is a planet of growth, expansion. It grows anything it touches. It allows for a wider perspective. And so with a Jupiter and Moon, again, Jupiter kind of grows and expands anything it touches. So it might be emotions are much more available or much more brought to the surface or much more, I would say, louder. Or there might be emotions that are more positive, more optimistic. So it might be a day where we're feeling more easeful, more optimistic. Yeah, we're feeling expansive even, joyful kind of energy during the 13th in the evening. So yeah, this is nice. Nice to do pretty much anything, honestly. but again, it is not a very loud energy. It's the moon. So, yeah, I was quite surprised. The astrology was pretty mild this week, apart from the planets that are ingressing in different signs. But all in all, the 13th March, sometimes having lesser aspects is actually pretty good because there can be less disturbances in our day-to-day role, our day-to-day routine. So the 13th of March is just one of those days where there's barely any major aspects going on. And so, there's probably not going to be any major disturbances in your routine, in anything that we're engaging in. Again, we all live through our experiences individually, and the transits that you're going through individually are also to be taken into account. So that's not necessarily spoken for everyone. Everyone will live through their own personal experiences on certain days, but in the collective energy, it's a day of very mild disturbances or any mild. There's not a lot of major energy that could deroute us or I would say bother any kind of routine or projects that are going on for us. And in fact, it has an emotional energy that is more positively inclined, more expansive, more joyful. So, yeah, that is for the 13th of March. So great day to just go about, do your thing, and hopefully, know that there might not be as much, shakeups or anything disturbing your routines. But main thing that is coming up now is that on March 14th, the sun does move into the sign of Pisces. So I'm just gonna bring it up to that time there. I think it happens at like 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, sun moves into Pisces. So to me, that calls on the beginning of eclipse season. And so watch out for an eclipse season video. I am planning on filming that pretty much tomorrow, and posting that very soon, but a video that basically goes over the eclipses and how that will affect all signs. So that will be a video that will be geared towards you personally and how that will affect you and not just collectively. So I'm excited to be filming that because eclipse season is pretty huge. It's a big time during the year. And for anyone who doesn't know what season is, eclipse season is basically happens twice a year. And it essentially happens where two lunations, so a full moon and a new moon, happen in the same sign as the north node and the south node are situated. Now, the North Node and the South Node traditionally are points that are very karmic. They delineate a lot of our fated or destined or very karmic lessons. And so when full moons or new moons happen very close or in the same sign as the North Node and South Node, it really triggers some very major life changes, some very major karmic changes that are meant to happen for us at certain times. And so they're very interesting and very relevant to look at and to understand, especially where it's happening for us in our charts and which area of lives are affected, so that we can understand where those big energies are hitting. And what's different about eclipse season is that those full moons and new moons are very amplified in energy. So a normal full moon or new moon has like a lifespan or like a effect of 1 month, but an eclipse actually has a lifespan or effect of 6 months instead of just 1 month. So it's kind of like a full moon or new moon, like on steroids, you could say. Its effects are spanned out over a much longer period of time. Its effects are much more karmic, much more relevant, much more potent. So they're very, very good to understand, to look at. So do look out for the eclipse video. But now with the sun being in Pisces, and activating, the North Node in Pisces, this is the start of eclipse season. So we're gonna start feeling the amping up of energy starting from that point on. The eclipses are happening, I believe, 24th of March, and I don't remember the second one. I think it's the beginning of April. It's 2 weeks after that, so beginning of April at some point. And so, yeah, Sun is in Pisces. We can see right here, we've got quite the pack of energy starting to amalgamate in Pisces. There's a Sun now. We have Neptune, been there for a little while. We have Mercury still there. We have the North Node, like I just explained, and asteroid Chiron. So we've got a good little pack of energy. meaning there's quite a concentration going on in Pisces, and especially in where Pisces rules for you in your chart. So again, know your rising sign, know where this is hitting you. This is quite relevant and important. But going back to the sun and what that means for us as a collective. So the sun rules our focus, where we place most of our energy as a collective, and it spends about 30 days in a sign. So now, with the sun moving into Pisces for the next 30 days, we're going away from the focus of Aquarian energy, which were more light, more objective, intellectual, more focused on large groups of people, technology, innovation, surprises, shifts, changes. And now we're moving the focus to what's more Piscean. And again, I have talked about Pisces energy in the video already, being the sign that's ruled by Neptune and Jupiter. But especially we go upon, Neptune to describe Pisces, in the sense of, depth of emotion, depth of intuition, spirituality, the loss of boundaries, the ability to connect and to merge with everything around us, and hence why Pisces is such an emotional and intuitive sign. And so Pisces rules things that are, again, more mystical, more spiritual, more emotional, things that are hidden, hidden to us, to our human perception. Pisces is associated with the 12th house, which is the house of anything that is otherworldly. So again, very spiritually inclined sign, but also very much about things that are outside of the mundane reality, things that take us outside of the mundane: movies, music, art, photography, glamour, the media in some degree, because the media is a depiction of reality, but it's a bit twisted. So it's anything that's a bit like a bit of like the glamorized aspect of life, So it's a very artistically and imaginatively inclined time, and it's a great time to focus on that as a collective, to focus on the things that, move us in a way that's more artistic, in a way that's more emotional. We're probably going to be more emotional as a collective, more intuitive, more spiritually inclined, even more inclined towards exploring these kinds of ideas or these kinds of energies and subjects. But the main thing that, well, first of all, one of the biggest things is Pisces. It's just, it's such a deep sea of energy. Like I feel like every time I go through a Pisces season, like I just feel like I'm swimming in this depth of emotion. Like it's just there's just such a depth of emotional current going on, and it's really palpable. Like you can really feel the depth of energy, and it's like even like music reaches you on a deeper level, and everything almost reaches you on a deeper level because it's such a sensitive energy. Now, obviously, many people may react to this in a different way depending on their own personal charts, right? If you don't have a lot of water energy, this may be an energy that you're kind of awkward with and you don't really, tune into that much. Um, but all in all, that's really the Piscean current. But another thing that's always very important for me to mention when it comes to Pisces season is that, in the modern and traditional astrology system, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. It's the 12th sign. So I personally find that whenever I go through Pisces season, there are themes of endings. There are themes of things, crumbling and kind of ending their course. So you can kind of expect that with Pisces season. There might be this energy of, things are ending, things are coming into a completion process as we're getting ready for Aries season in Sidereal, which is a huge time of fresh energy initiation and new beginning. And it's also springtime, here in North America. So um, yeah, so that's a really important thing to note with Piscean energy is that it is the sign of or that traditionally is associated with endings. So listen to whatever comes up, feel it out and notice if it's time for th certain things to crumble away in your lives and to actually make space for something new whenever Aries season does come about. So to be expected with Pisces season. So that's kind of my spiel for Pisces season, um, as it is coming about. So What else happens on March 14th? In the middle of the night, the moon does make a conjunction with Uranus. This happens at like 5 a.m., so actually, maybe actually the morning, Eastern Standard Time. So might be like sudden shifts and changes in our emotional current. You know, Uranus is a planet of surprises and shifts and movement. And so with the moon coming into its conjunction with Uranus, we may find our emotional states change quickly, or there may be something that kind of triggers us to have a very quick change of our emotional states, of our internal state. But again, very light energy, not something that's super loud, I would say. It also happens at an interesting time of the day. The only other thing that I have for March 14th is eventually in the later part of the morning, there is a little bit of I would say, tension in the air. And that happens specifically at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where the moon forms a harsh angle with Mars. So we've got the moon in Aries, Mars in the last degrees of Capricorn, kind of bumping together in a way that's a bit harsh. So there might be some sort of a I don't know. I just think it's such a spicy, like emotional energy when I see Moon Square Mars. Be careful of, expressing anger. Be careful of acting impulsively, emotionally. There might be emotional frustrations, I would say, at this time of the day, where something might just like, oh, really like frustrate you on an emotional level. And it might want to make you, take action or initiate in a certain way. I would say, ground yourself as much as possible with that. It could be quite feisty or frustrating in the air, but again, this is only the moon making a very light aspect, so it might not be felt very much by most people. The only thing that I have pretty much written for the rest of the 14th is that eventually the moon does ingress into Taurus. This happens afternoon on March 14th for the next 2 days. Again, the moon, we go from the moon in Aries, which is very active, very impulsive, very like feisty, to the moon in Taurus, which is very grounded, very stable, yeah, much more slower, stable kind of energy. The moon loves being in Taurus, so there's more stability in the emotional sense. We find emotional comfort in things that engage with the five senses. I personally, this is like a personal share, but whenever the moon is in Taurus, I just like can eat anything, seriously. And it's like the most pleasurable thing. It's like the most experience nice, like fun experience. I always find myself eating a bit more whenever the moon is in Taurus, because it brings that whole other level of comfort. Um, but the moon in Taurus really is finding that emotional safety or comfort in anything that is engaging with the five senses, because Taurus is all about the physical and the five senses. So again, being in nature, listening to music, having a little spa day, having really comfortable clothes, really great like cooked meal, something like that will be very well received. And overall, we find again more stability in the emotional realm on that day. So that's it for the 14th. The 15th, moving on to the next day. Um, Not much happening again, but I do have, two little things written there. First off is in the middle of the night in Eastern Standard Time. That happens at around like 1 a.m. More specifically, yeah, 1 a.m. Moon forms a trine with Pluto, so there's an ease of communication between the moon or emotions and Pluto, depth, what's hidden, what's in the shadow, transformation. So if you're awake, or if you're in another part of the world and you feel there's more depth emotionally speaking, there's something that reaches you on a deeper level, almost to the sense that it's exposing something that's usually hidden emotionally speaking, do engage with it. Again, there's maybe some sort of emotional, depth or transformation going on through some sort of internal process on that day. If there's a heaviness emotionally, that could definitely be the case as well. So there definitely seems to be this underlying current going on in the night. But again, lighter energy. We're talking about the moon here. Later in the day, the only other thing that I have written is essentially Mars moving and ingressing into Aquarius. So this happens, let's see, I believe 8 a.m. So we have Mars finally making its ingress into Aquarius. Mars has been in Capricorn for 2 months. Now Mars is in Aquarius for about 2 months. Mars rules our drive, what motivates us, how we take action, and why we take action. And so it's all about really our motivation and how we move about to obtain something. In Capricorn, it's very structured, it's very organized, and it loves being in Capricorn for that reason. In Aquarius, I would say, we can notice that our action taking or the way that we pursue things may be a bit more unconventional, maybe a bit more surprising. Maybe we're going about something and we're like, oh, why not take that route instead of that route? And maybe that allows us to have a very different way of taking action towards certain things. So there might be more surprises, more unconventionality in how we choose to move about something. We may be motivated to connect to larger groups of people, more motivation on a collective level to engage in anything that is more humanitarian, anything that is more technology related as well. So it's a time where we're motivated to connect intellectually. Maybe we take action from a space that is more intellectual as well, because Aquarius is a very intellectual sign. So maybe we're taking action from more of that mind space instead of maybe our intuition or emotional space. But that's a very general collective delineation. Of course, this is going to especially be important depending on your rising sign and where this is basically activating in your chart. And again, to give you another example, if you're Gemini rising, this is hitting your ninth house of long distance travel and of higher forms of studying and knowledge, of your belief systems, of what you believe to be true on a higher perspective, of your philosophy of life. So this is a 2 month period where you're going to be very motivated to learn. You're going to be hungry for knowledge, and especially knowledge that is very higher minded and metaphysical. So that's just one example of how your rising sign will help you to delineate where this is hitting in your chart and how you can maybe merge and optimize this energy knowing this. So if you want to know more about that, and want to know how this affects you, do send me a message or reach out to me and I'll gladly help you out with that. But yeah, Mars and Aquarius. So there's definitely, we're finally moving away from the Capricorn energy, serious, dense, structured, goal oriented, which was great. It was great. But now we're definitely in this part of the chart, which is more eccentric, more social, more surprising, but especially more Piscean, more emotional, more intuitive, spiritual, very artistically inclined, very foggy potentially as well. Loss of boundaries. So yeah, we're gearing up for eclipse season now. By this time we're definitely gonna start feeling the potency of the energy, especially with the moon, moving, in the last through the first quarter and then moving through the full moon, which is going to be our lunar eclipse on the 24th of March. So, until that time, the closer the moon moves to this eclipse point, I think that the more intensely we're going to start to feel this energy coming through. Again, do look for an eclipse video that that I will probably be posting on the next couple days as well, if you want to know more about the eclipses and how that will affect you. So, final day of the report is the 16th of March. So, 16th of March, I don't have much for that day as well, other than the fact that eventually the moon will be ingressing into Gemini. So, this happens at 5:52 p.m. on March 16th. So, just gonna move it right forward there. Uh, we totally, okay, we're good. So Moon in Gemini for the next couple days, again, meaning our emotional worlds takes up the very social, very light energy of Gemini. Gemini is all about information, about communication, about lighthearted connection, very social energy. So on an emotional level, we might want to talk, we might want to socialize with people, we might want to communicate a lot more, and it's a great time to network, a great time to get out there, be a bit more social with the moon in Gemini. But what's happening mostly is that the moon will be forming a square with the sun, and that'll happen later in the evening, specifically at 11 p.m. And that basically announces the first quarter moon, which is a time where, the intentions that we've placed on the new moon may be challenged, or there may be a call to action where we're like, okay, we had those intentions, a week ago during the new moon. Are we moving towards those intentions? Are we moving towards those goals, or are we not? So this may be a time of tension where we're reassessing the goals that we've put through during the new moon period, either consciously or not. But otherwise, not a whole bunch of energy. The thing that I am noticing though is that if we look here, the sun is coming very close to Neptune, and that's actually going to be exact on the 17th, which by this time I may have already posted next week's report talking about this energy. But yeah, this is going to be definitely very a Neptunian day on the 17th, where again, our focus is going to merge with Neptune, the planet of Pisces, the planet of depth, of spirituality, of illusion, of fantasy, of imagination. So yeah, I'm going to leave the spiel for that for next week's report, potentially if I do decide to tune in and film that report as well. So yeah, this is it for this weekly report. Not a whole lot going on, a lot of lunar aspects going on, but hopefully that did help you in some kind of way. I hope this helps anyone to potentially help them understand the energies and help them maybe guide them to potentially optimize certain energies more, knowing the astrology and knowing the natural cycle of the planets right now. Obviously, again, now we're in Pisces season, so I talked about it extensively in the video, but you can maybe merge more of your focus towards these Neptunian themes in your life. But regardless, they will be brought up because of the sun being in Pisces. So, yeah, I hope this was useful to anyone watching. I hope that the information was clear and concise. If there are any questions about anything I discussed in the video, please reach out to me. Email, Instagram in the description box below for any services that are wanting to be discussed or offered. I do offer birth chart readings and yearly readings. Reach out to me, Instagram and email description box below. And I think that's it for today. So I'm going to see you guys soon for an eclipse video. I have a couple more videos planned for some of the big transits coming up, and some non-astrology stuff coming up as well, potentially as well. That's a lot of as well. But yeah, I hope you have an excellent week. I will see you soon for the rest of my videos that are planned, and have a great rest of your day. See ya.